I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So a deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours. I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face, and that affects so many aspects of our daily lives. From our politics, to our business affairs, to our community relations, our international affairs, to our family affairs, to our individual relationships. Character matters. And we are getting a first-class crash course in understanding not only how serious the problem is, but the nature of the problem currently in our country, because of some of the horrendous examples of character disturbances that we have seen in some of our public figures, some of our leaders. And I'm not the person who breaks ethics and points the finger and assigns labels, diagnostic labels. But I am here to talk about tonight the defining characteristics of character disturbance and let you draw your own conclusions. Because the time couldn't be more right to have this discussion. It's urgent. Our very survival as a free society, certainly our survival as a healthy community, is threatened by the extent of character disturbance that we see among even our top leaders. So, with that in mind, we're going to have a discussion tonight. I know it's Super Bowl Sunday. I know a lot of you probably are glued to the TV, and that's understandable. Maybe some of you have put it on record and plan to watch it later, as I do. But if you want to join the conversation tonight, if you have something to contribute, question you'd like to ask, something that you'd like to try and understand better, maybe a situation you'd like to share. Whatever the case may be, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We have been lately still having some difficulties, but we found some ways around that last week. So I'm hoping we can do that again. Uh, and those of you who have trouble getting through the first time, I'll make an announcement and give you an alternate way to do it. And then we'll patch you through one way or the other by hook or by crook, because it's important if you want to join the conversation to be a part of the program. So once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And I'll be happy to take your call. Well, what a week it's been. What a week it's been. And I'm going to be illustrating some things about the very nature of character disturbance, especially narcissism, and its more malignant form. We'll be talking about that a lot tonight. You know, we live, unfortunately, in the age of narcissism. There are so many aspects of our present culture, the culture that's been around now for at least 20 years and is deeply embedded within the fabric of our society. There are so many elements of that culture that don't just promote or enable character disturbance. Enabling is the concept whereby it allows a certain disease process to thrive. This comes out of addiction research, where relationship partners of alcoholics and other chemically dependent individuals enable the disease to progress because of the lack of confrontation, appropriate confrontation, and especially sometimes the lack of allowing some of the more catastrophic consequences that can occur to occur, so that the person who is using and abusing experiences those consequences, those negative consequences, and then maybe acquires some motivation to break out of the pattern. And, you know, it's more than that. Unfortunately, in our culture, it's more than just enabling character disturbance, especially narcissism. There's an active promotion of it, and worse yet, an active reward of it. People with these character disturbances get rewarded. They get payoffs. As a matter of fact, sometimes the payoffs are huge. They become very wealthy. They become very powerful. They would have no reason on the face of this earth to even consider changing their ways of thinking, their ways of acting. There's no cost. The cost of change would be steep. And the benefits of remaining just as they are, for them, unfortunately, are abundant in this crazy, crazy mixed up culture. And as I've said many times before, it is a vicious cycle. It is a truly vicious cycle, because the more character impaired people you have, the more character disturbance, the more character impaired people you have in the society, the more societal standards, norms, principles, values, essential values become corrupted. And the more those values, standards, etc., become corrupted, and the more the institutions that had long over time served the function of promoting and rewarding all of those important principles, when those institutions crumble, then you have more character disturbance. So it's a classic vicious cycle, with more and more character disturbance causing more and more cultural decline, and more cultural decline producing more character disturbance. It's just that simple. It's an inextricable relationship, and it's a classic vicious cycle that's been going on now for a few decades, and it's reaching a point where something just absolutely must give. Something has to give. And believe me, something will give. There will be a price to pay for this. And it's not like we can say we didn't see it coming. The signs are so obvious and they're so everywhere and they're so right in our face that only a fool could deny them. Only a fool would deny them. It's just too unbelievable what we've allowed to happen to us culturally. And I know I've said this before many times. I've said that even though Alexis de Tocqueville never actually said this, there's truth to the quote attributed to him. And that is, America, in its periods of greatness, its greatness was always tied up with its goodness. He is quoted as saying, America is great because it's good. And when it ceases being good, it'll cease to be great. And nothing could be more true. Even though he probably didn't say that. Nothing could be more true. Everything hinges around the character problem. Everything. That's also the point of the song that you hear opening and closing the program. It was a sentimental inspiration, love for this wonderful place, and love for the principles, for the truly noble principles that are there in its makeup and in its founding. Now, there were some not so good things right from the beginning. I'm not saying that. You know, we largely built this country on the backs of cheap and slave labor. It's a disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. So it hasn't always been good. We haven't always been great. But we've had our shining moments. And if we're ever to have them again, we, excuse me, we have to take those values seriously again. And we have to decide that character matters again. We have to make it matter. We have to make it count. In everything we do, in every choice we make. So when we were writing the lyrics of the song, that's the sentiment we wanted to express in America, My Home. We wanted folks to understand that this is personal, that each and every one of us has a duty to honor and protect the freedoms we enjoy. And that means necessarily that each one of us has to take seriously the obligation that we bear to be of decent character, because freedom only works when there's character. They're inextricably interdependent. You cannot separate freedom from the importance of responsibility, which demands character. They go hand in hand. You can't separate them. When you have freedom without responsibility, without character, without internal moral compass, all hell breaks loose. It always has, it always will. That's just the way it works. And that's what we've been witnessing for decades now. And we've gotten so used to it that it only outrages us now when an extraordinary example of narcissism hits us in the face. And we say to ourselves, whoa, what the heck is this? Because we're finally seeing an example of it so egregious that we can't deny it. We can't slough it off. And we're also seeing it not only in such intensity, but with such vulgarity accompanying it, that it's a real turnoff. People are revolted. And that's the way it is with some narcissism, but it isn't the way it is with all. There are plenty of narcissists who are really smooth, slick, charming operators. They have us thinking just about anything other than they're in this life strictly for themselves. They respect absolutely no higher power. They have absolutely no internal moral compass. And they're just as dangerous. They wear a smile. They're not crude. They're sophisticated. And they're just as dangerous. Perhaps more so. They're so hard to recognize on the front end. So we're getting this crash course whether we like it or not, whether we recognize it or not. We're going to learn all about narcissism in all of its forms, including its most malignant form. We're going to be learning about that over the next few years. We're going to be learning about it, unfortunately, the hard way. But we can't escape it. And it's a necessary lesson. So tonight's program is about narcissism and narcissists, what they're really like, what makes certain narcissists more malignant than others. We'll go into some detail about what malignant narcissism is. And maybe it will resonate with you, especially if you're in a relationship, a truly toxic relationship with a narcissistically inclined character. I mentioned before on earlier programs that the official classification manual of the American Psychiatric Association last year considered removing the official classification for a narcissistic personality disorder. And it's not like the folks that contribute to this diagnostic manual didn't know that narcissism exists or wanted to assert that it didn't exist. It's not that at all. They know narcissism is there. But whether or not there is a singular personality type and or disorder called narcissistic personality disorder is up for some debate, because narcissism is a dimension of so many personality and character disturbances. So, and the other thing is that the way we've chosen to define when something becomes a disorder, everybody has a personality. Everybody has a fairly stereotypic way of not only looking at the world, but also engaging with the world, engaging with others. It's a particular style of looking at things and interacting with things and other people that defines personality. And by that definition, you can see where many personalities, the way they go about looking at the world, the way they go about coping with life and coping with others, the way they conduct themselves in their interpersonal affairs, you can readily tell that some of these styles are not very functional. Some of these styles even rise to the level of what we call a disorder. And that's when the manifestations of the person's personality style are, one, so intense, two, so inflexible, and three, so deviant from the accepted social norm that the person is causing trouble either for themselves or for others in their lives, and they're experiencing distress as a result of it. And that definition has kind of outlived its usefulness, unfortunately, because some of the personality styles that we once thought truly aberrant and therefore out of the mainstream, they were so deviant from the norm that we could rightfully call them disorders. That's not true anymore. Some of the things that we conceptualize that way are just so commonplace today, they're not unique at all. They're not deviant. I hear folks talking all the time about Donald Trump's personality. And as I said, I'm going to observe all the canons on this program. I'm not going to be one of those folks who, in an attempt to pile it on, and I'm making no judgments about whether they probably have it right or not. That's not the issue. As a professional, without doing a formal assessment, because our criteria are based solely on our criteria for personality and character disturbances or disorders, are solely based on observed behavioral features. So they've got these tests on the internet, you know. Are you a narcissist? Are you a psychopath? Answer these questions and we'll tell you. I wish it were that easy. Now, can anybody spot with a fairly degree of certainty narcissistic traits in a person? Absolutely. Absolutely. Most of us are familiar enough with the basic tenets, with the basics of personality psychology, so to speak, that we can tell when somebody's just not right. And it's not because their biochemistry is off or because they're crazy. It's just that the way they do things, the way they choose to interact, the way they conduct themselves is in itself a problem. And that's what we're witnessing on the grand stage here. But more particularly what we are witnessing, and this is, I consider to be one of the most important, unfortunate things. Excuse me. What we're witnessing is a manifestation of narcissistic traits so unpalatable to most people. They look at the banal nature of it, the crudeness of it, and they're turned off by that. But far more insidious and far more dangerous, I think, in many cases, is the slick, smooth operator that comes along as polished, may even come along as caring, knows what to say and what to do to invite you to feel a certain way and to respond a certain way. These folks are masters of the art of what I call impression management. I'm not the only one that calls it that. Other professionals do too. And I'm not sure who's dangerous, these crude, narcissistically inclined individuals who've got it all out there for everybody to see and it just about turns your stomach, or these pull the wool over your eyes, I look really good, really polished. You're going to give me your loyalty. You're going to give me everything I want, just about, because you're really enamored of me. When in fact, underneath it all, I have zero substance. I have zero moral character. We have those folks among us, unfortunately. Character disturbance is a phenomenon of both spectrum and degree. I've talked about that many, many times before. You can have character disturbance. You can have narcissistic features in your personality and still not be fully disordered. And you can have these traits in your personality and not be so inflexible in how you cope with things that people wouldn't say that you have other more redeeming traits in your personality as well. So our definitions have to change, and one of the ways that we're going to be changing them, it looks like in the near future, and that I actually applaud, is that ultimately it comes down to relationships. It comes down to how is it that a person with this character disturbance that we all see but we don't understand, how is it that a person with this disturbance is going to be able to get along with and interact with any other high-powered, high-profile individual anywhere in the world? How are they going to do that? How are they going to have that engagement without alienating that person in some way, the other person in some way? It's just not possible. You cannot have these traits in your personality and not do damage. It's just not possible. And the more malignant the narcissism is, the more the potential for trouble. Now, quite some time ago, I used an example to illustrate some things, especially about narcissism. And just to refresh your memory, there are some cardinal features of this, what is now called a disorder. You know, there's a common, I'll digress here for just a minute, there's a common misperception, not just among lay people, but even among lawyers, judges, just the average person. There's a common misconception that as soon as you hear the word disorder, that necessarily means the brain's not working right, and it's not working right because of some internal mechanism that has failed or gone kaflooey in some way. That's the classical definition, and that just simply has to be replaced with a more inclusive and by the way, a more accurate description. So, you know, maybe you have a cell phone camera, and maybe you take you take a shot of an instance of road rage, and you keep it on your phone, just for a reminder about what jerks can look like. That person has the same profile as a more polished, more sophisticated, smoother operator type of an individual with the same personality characteristics. Personality dysfunction does not know race, it doesn't know creed, it doesn't know color, it doesn't know even your financial status. Because people go online and win tickets all the time. And I always see them there. They're always very generous. So, you know, it's a new day and a whole new set of problems. And character disturbance, well, that's the phenomenon of our time. I urge you, if you haven't gotten it, or any of my 4 books that, for that matter, get Character Disturbance. Have the light bulb go off. Realize how true probably what your gut has been telling you for the longest time really is true. Get some validation. You know, in addition to the vulgarity of this kind of manifestation that jumps out against us, and in addition to the fact that probably the more dangerous narcissist is that narcissist who can maybe turn on the waterworks, but still completely lacks empathy, that can that can charm the socks off of you and can be concealing the darkest of intentions. It's just the phenomenon of our time, character disturbance is. And when we see egregious, vulgar examples, it turns our stomach. But the more insidious problem is that it's there and it permeates everything. Folks inside and outside of Congress right now are pointing fingers in one direction. They want to say we have a narcissist in chief. I got news for you. There's no shortage of narcissism on Capitol Hill. No shortage whatsoever. And we've let that happen. We've even let people who couldn't possibly, who simply don't have the character to build any other enterprise. They don't have it. They don't have the skill set. They don't have the moral integrity. In other words, basically losers who then come to power through the ballot box and through constant pandering to the special interests that got them there. What a sad day. De Tocqueville, regardless of what he actually did or didn't write, is probably turning over his grave. He's turning over in his grave, thinking about this sea of character disturbance that we swim in. And how corrupt everything has become within our most important social institutions. I heard today, a report about a meeting that the president had yesterday to discuss just exactly how taxes could and would be cut on most businesses, which would therefore include, fortunately, would include low and middle enterprise businesses, small businesses, the whole kind of dream that the American foundation envisioned. All about building something bigger. So here we are, after decades of being lied to, decades of being manipulated, decades of being charmed, all that stuff, after decades of that, we're in such financial hot water. It's not funny. It's no longer something you can ignore. And in the midst of that, because things are crumbling down all around us, infrastructure-wise, it's getting very, very dangerous in places with certain bridges and overpasses. Very dangerous. It's only a matter of time before there's another one of those big accidents like occurred several years ago in California. It's only a matter of time. So, we have to decide that character matters. We have to decide that it's going to matter to our politics, it's going to matter to our businesses, it's going to matter to our schools, it's going to matter to everything. We have to decide that. We have to make character matter again. And as I was beginning to say earlier, when I allowed myself to get sidetracked, avail yourself at least of one of my books, like Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age. Get some insight into what makes these folks really tick, as I put it in the book. Get some insight. Understand what's really going on. How they manage to do the things they do, how they get the better of them. Get to know that, because that's how you empower yourself. That's the beginning of personal empowerment. When you know the kind of person you're dealing with, really know what they're like in character, that's what's going to make all the difference. It's going to make a difference, for example, if you're getting married, it's going to make a difference whether or not you have a healthy marriage that is properly nurtured and has a chance of remaining intact. And the very fact that so many marriages, so many fall apart, and not just once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. The very fact that we have so many of these things tells us directly, undeniably, how serious the character disturbance problem is. It's really serious. And now we get to witness a crash course on how bad it can become on a grand scale. And it's pretty sobering. I actually didn't let this be known to my wife when we were talking about this. I actually didn't want to run the risk of being wrong, but my intuition was telling me all during the election cycle that there wouldn't have been such a massive effort to assail President Trump's character so dramatically unless the other side of the political spectrum was scared, was scared, really scared. And so therefore I thought to myself, you know what? He probably has more of a shot than people think. Besides which, people with character impairments are really good at one thing. They're really, really good at spotting the vulnerabilities of others. Because this is what they thrive on. They thrive on exploiting those vulnerabilities. And why do they exploit those vulnerabilities? Always for personal gain, whether it be power, money, position of importance, position of dominance. There's always something in it for them. And what's in it for them is usually not pretty. And we're witnessing play out on the grand stage, on center stage in our country right now. This character dysfunction, the likes of which we'll likely not see again, because I just can't see how it could get any worse. And notice I was very careful once again. I'm not going to succumb to the temptation of giving a label, a diagnostic label. It's not right. It's not appropriate. So we're not going to do it. Give yourself a chance to empower yourself by getting my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, or my book, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, or any of my other books, The Judas Syndrome, How Did We End Up Here? Go to Amazon or barnesandnoble.com. Go to one of the online resellers. With some of my books, you're going to be able to access probably like Amazon Prime and get it the very next day or two. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Empower yourself. Gain the knowledge. Gain the knowledge necessary to survive and thrive in this character disordered world of ours. And also gain the awareness of what to look for in the way of a professional counselor that can really do more good than harm. Unfortunately, there are far too many programs, especially, and I promise you folks, I am not trying to trash the 12-step or addiction model. I'm not trying to do that because I have a special fondness in my heart for that program. I know what a powerful thing it can be. And I know how effective certain structured clinical programs are to an individual's eventual sobriety and well-being. So we're not talking at all about those aspects of behavior that we can rightfully label. And I'm not talking about putting a label on those things. I'm not going to violate ethics. But I am going to talk about the defining characteristics of character disturbance so that you can make up your own mind how serious it is. And I'm going to use examples because people provide these examples. It's not our fault they provide them. And I want to go to an event that occurred this past week. I was going to pull the video up. As a matter of fact, if I can do it with some degree of safety while I'm on the air, I may try to do it. I don't know, maybe some of you have already done it. Oh, and by the way, I see that someone has tried to call in. I see that somebody has tried to call in. Matter of fact, they tried a couple of times. And I'm going to invite that person to do it again. I see a call came in at 6:34 the last time, and I wasn't able to pick it up. But I can assure the caller, if you try again, that I will be able to patch you through. So, caller, if you're listening, and you're the person that tried about 8 minutes or so ago, 10 minutes or so ago, give it another shot, and I will patch you in the way that I have figured out to patch the calls in. And for those of you who call the regular number, once again, it's 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. But caller, I see a phone number here from a different number. It looks like an 813 exchange. If that's you and you want to join the conversation, please give us a call back. As you placed the call the last time, do the same thing, and I'll do my best to plug you in. So we're getting this crash course on narcissism. And you can Google the National Prayer Breakfast. I wish you would. What a crash course this provides. You can Google the National Prayer Breakfast and our illustrious president's comments at that prayer breakfast. And some of it is so unfathomable that it just kind of sets you back. It just kind of really sets you back. It's almost too unbelievable, too unreal. And I'm pulling up in just a minute here the transcript because I want to quote accurately. I want to quote accurately. So let me pull up the transcript and see if I can find the relevant passage here. I see we've got this call coming in, and I'm going to do my best to patch it in this time. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Yes, hello, Dr. Simon.
Hi, I'm so glad you were able to call back, and I was able to patch you through.
Yes, let me just turn down my radio because we're on a 7-second delay here.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I listen to you all the time. I called you before last summer, and I really enjoy your show. But, the one thing that that you keep talking about, and the one thing that I keep getting confused about, is I think that all character defects are DNA originated. Now, you could say, well, there's some people that have kids and they grow up fine and that they have very good values and character and this and that. But if you really look at the spectrum of things, I think it more weighs towards the DNA of the parents. If the parents have emotional issues or character issues, more than likely the children are going to. And if you think, and this is what I'm confused about, if you think that you could just make that go away, that is a happy thought.
Well,
to say the least.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, and bear with me as I labor through this explanation, because you raise a really great point. And we're developing solid research now through brain imaging studies, through DNA analysis, through other kinds of studies. We know that certain traits, certain predispositions, are in fact in the DNA. They might not be encoded specifically in the DNA, but they're constitutional. There's a basic biological foundation, whether it has to do with how DNA was expressed during early formative years, or even during formative time in the womb. We do know that there is a heavy constitutional loading for certain traits. For example, the capacity for empathy. We know that present in many of the behavioral disorders is a diminished empathy capacity. And that is not something that came about because of some impoverishment of environment or some abuse and neglect. It's just there. Now,
Right.
Is that the only way that can come about? No. There can be environmental circumstances that produce that too. And so it doesn't really matter whether it's the DNA or the Constitution or it's the environment. When you've got that empathy deficit and it factors into personality development, you're going to have a person turn out in a manner that's a problem.
Well, I would argue that it's a predisposition.
Well, it is, but what I'm saying is to say it's this or that is really overly simplistic. Unfortunately, life is a bit more complicated than that most of the time. And to say that it's strictly a DNA issue, we have evidence that that's not the case. We have plenty of evidence that that's not the case. But we do have mounting evidence that constitutional factors play an infinitely greater role than we used to think. We used to think everything was environment, everything was learning. And we now know that's just not true. It's just not true.
Well, okay, so we are from an early age. I'll just give you an example. From an early age, I believed in Santa Claus because my parents told me there was a Santa Claus at 5 years old. At 10 years old, I realized there wasn't a Santa Claus. My parents were lying to me, but they were doing that in love.
Yeah.
They were doing that in love and excitement. Now the point I'm trying to make here is, as we grew up, we listened to the news media, and we realize now that we were lied to about World War I. We were lied to about World War II. We were lied to about the Iraqi War. This also causes a lot of, psychosis, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Well, lying
You
is
know what I mean?
yeah, lying is certainly nothing new. It's an integral part of character disturbance. And you're correct when you say that that it isn't the first time that we've been lied to on a scale that had massive consequences.
Yes.
My point is that if we don't get real serious about addressing the problem directly and its systemic and root causes, both causes, both systemic and root, if we don't get serious about that, we're in deep doo-doo. All it takes is one person with a deranged character and enough plutonium to wipe out masses of people. That's all it takes. We can
problems are very little.
Yeah, we can no longer afford the complacency that we have had about this problem.
Right.
We can't afford it. The risks are just too high.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Dr. Simon, I just wanted to call in. I like I said, I listen to you every week, and I appreciate your shows, and thank you very much for your time.
Yes, and I'm going to suggest something to you. If you really want to do some highbrow reading, if you want to put yourself to sleep one night, in other words, there is a theorist on personality formation. His name is Theodore Milan. He's the giant in the industry. He is the giant. And he's got no axe to grind. He's got no bias. He's always gunning for the truth. And he's got several books that are, as thick as encyclopedia volumes used to be. And they're very difficult reads. But he goes into all these contributory factors and the research backing it up. And basically, he's unique in his perspective on the dynamic interaction between all of the formative factors and how people turn out the way they do and why they adopt the styles of coping that they do. So if you're having trouble getting to sleep one night, pick up one of his books. One that would be a good one to start with is called Personality Disorders in Modern Life. It has kind of a purplish cover. It's probably about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. And it's a difficult read, but I think you'll get a very broad and a comprehensive perspective. You might really enjoy it because you sound like you've given this a lot of thought, and it sounds like you're a thinker in general. So give it a shot.
Okay, Dr. Simon. Thank you, and have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Well, I'm glad the caller persisted there and called back, and I'll do my best the next time to be more attentive to folks trying to call in that way. But I was going to the National Prayer Breakfast, and I was going to some of the quotes that were so disturbing. So let me just give you. I want to make sure. I want to make sure that I do this accurately. So here is the quote. Now, there's you have to get the picture. We're at a national prayer breakfast. all these ministers from various denominations are in the room. It's all supposed to be about appealing to a higher power, however folks see God. And the communication of prayer, the relationship in prayer to that higher power, and invoking both the name and the assistance of that higher power to handle the problems of our conflicted world. So here's the quote. We had tremendous success on The Apprentice when I ran for president. I had to leave the show. That's when I knew for sure that I was doing it. And they hired a big movie star, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to take my place. And we know how that turned out. The ratings went down the tubes. It's been a total disaster, and Mark will never, ever bet against Trump again. And I want to just pray for Arnold, if we can, for those ratings, okay? And then he got a couple of laughs. He was making a joke, actually. A person by the name of Mark, an agent, because they had a disagreement. He thought it would be funny. But to use a forum like this to basically brag is a sign of some incredible disrespect, incredible insensitivity, and incredible egocentricity. Incredible egocentricity on scales of which we rarely see. And I like to tell folks at my workshops, and by the way, I'm going to, next week I will be in first South San Francisco, then Berkeley, and then Sacramento. And boy, do we have a huge crowd in Sacramento. So I'm really looking forward to that. But as I tell folks at these seminars, you can't make this stuff up. We're seeing the signs of it all over the place. And we have always thought our traditional theories about these types of personalities, these more narcissistic individuals, is that they just don't really appreciate what they're doing, that they don't see it. But the fact is, it's not so much that they're not aware. That's what I tell my folks. It's not so much that they're not aware. The bigger problem is they don't care. The shame is not there. The empathy is not there. The ability to really care in the kinds of healthy ways that most of us care is not there. That's what makes for the breeding of a more malignant form of narcissism. And we're getting a crash course in it. I'll have more to say about it next week. So tune in once again at the same time for Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thank you for listening. Take care. I'll see you again next week.